course, a huge victory. She took out the defending champion in the previous round.
Applause floods the court, and why wouldn't it? She'd just knocked out the defending champion 1 round earlier. The kind of player who's impossible not to root for. Every emotion right there on her face for the world to see. Nobody inside that stadium had any idea what was coming, and that's precisely why it hit so hard. Picture it. A 21-year-old steps onto the most iconic court in tennis, and most of the crowd can't even pronounce her name correctly. 10 days later, that exact same crowd is on its feet, waving flags nobody remembers packing, while grown men back home are setting alarms for 3 a.m. just to watch the replay one more time. This wasn't only a tennis result. It was one of those rare moments that feels like you're watching history rewrite itself live. And if you think you already know the ending, you don't, because the real twist isn't the win, it's everything that happens after the loss. Rewind 8 days, before that hush fell over center court. Nobody had circled her name in their bracket predictions. She was a throwaway mention, maybe round 1, round 2 if things broke her way, then quietly eliminated before the second week even got started. That was the script everyone else had already written for her. She just refused to read from it. She'd trained on courts that weren't always regulation size, sometimes shared with other sports altogether, in a country where raw talent has always outpaced the facilities built to develop it. So when she finally walked out onto grass this pristine, this historic, no one was sure how her nerves would hold. Then everyone found out. Her first real test wasn't some low-ranked journeywoman, it was the defending champion, a player who doesn't just win matches, she dismantles opponents with almost clinical precision. For a set and a half, that's exactly the pattern repeating itself. And then, somewhere in the middle of the second set, something shifted so subtly even the commentary booth nearly missed it. Watch her eyes during that stretch, locked on the baseline, never once flicking up at the crowd, never once rattled by the name across the net. That tiny detail changed everything. Her swings got fuller, her feet moved earlier, nothing flashy about it, just point after relentless point, until the wall she was supposed to crash into simply stopped existing. Final point of the match. The return sails long. For 1 full second, nothing. No sound, no movement, just a few thousand people forgetting how to breathe at exactly the same instant. Then the noise hits, and it doesn't stop, because an unknown just beat a legend, and everyone in that building knew they'd witnessed something they'd be retelling for years. By sunrise, this wasn't a scoreline anymore, it was the front page across the Philippines. Office workers set alarms 2 hours early just to catch the replay before their shift. Students with exams that morning stayed up anyway. Nobody was sleeping through this one. Here's where the story should have ended quietly, the way these things usually do. One big win, a tidy headline, then reality reasserting itself the next round. Except reality had other ideas. Waiting in the 4th round was someone who understood grass better than almost anyone left in the draw. A Wimbledon finalist from 2 years back. Flat, fast, brutally efficient on exactly this kind of surface. The type of player grass seems built for, while everyone else just tolerates it. And there was buried history here too. The kind that never makes the highlight reels but sits quietly in the back of a competitor's mind for months. Back in February, on a hard court in Dubai, Alex had beaten her, not narrowly, decisively. That loss had been carried quietly for 5 months, waiting for exactly this kind of stage to settle the score. So when the draw paired them, this stopped being a feel-good underdog story. It became personal, unfinished business. Walking out onto center court, the crowd wasn't settling in politely the way 4th-round crowds usually do. It was louder before a single ball was even struck. Sharper, the sound of people who already believed they were about to witness history. That kind of belief in a stadium changes the air pressure. You feel it before anything happens. Alex glanced up at flags that hadn't existed in that stand a week earlier. Her opponent didn't glance at the crowd once. First point. Alex's serve kicks out wide, barely gets a racket on it, and the roar that follows sounds like championship point already. Way too early, way too loud. For a moment, It feels like the fairy tale is simply going to keep writing itself. It doesn't. 2 games later, Alex nets a forehand she'd make blindfolded on an ordinary day. Her opponent holds, then holds again, and somewhere in that stretch, without anyone quite clocking the exact moment, this stopped being a coronation and became a real fight. The kind where momentum keeps switching hands like a card trick nobody can follow. Alex was winning the crowd, her opponent was winning the games, and that gap, between adoration and actual scoreboard pressure, is exactly where matches like this get decided. 30 all. A rally stretches past 10 shots, neither giving an inch, until a return clips the line and dies before it can even be reached. Breakpoint. Alex steps in, invites the big second serve, gets exactly that. Wrong read. The return skids past before her opponent has even decided which way to move. Break. For a moment, it looks like just another chapter in the fearless fairy tale the tournament had already fallen for. It isn't, because her opponent doesn't blink, not against this player, not after Dubai. She breaks straight back, almost bored-looking calm, the specific stillness that only comes from surviving pressure this size before. Even the commentators go quiet, that particular silence where everyone's quietly recalculating what match they're actually watching. The rallies stretch longer now, 10 shots, 12, neither woman willing to be first to admit fatigue. Alex serves to stay level. A brutal exchange ends in an error on a ball she'd normally track down without thinking. Break point again. She misses her mark by inches. Her opponent doesn't miss hers. That's the entire difference. Break. Alex smiles anyway, more at herself than her box, a gesture that says clearly enough, not done yet. But her opponent doesn't just protect the lead, she builds on it, closes the set 6-4 with a composure that makes the chaos before it look almost effortless, even though none of it had been. At the changeover, Alex stares at her racket strings like the answer might be hiding somewhere in them. For the first time all tournament, a real question hangs heavy over that stadium. Is this the match where the story ends? She doesn't know it yet, sitting in that chair, but the next 4 games are about to flip that question upside down. Because here's something almost nobody watching remembered. Earlier in this same tournament, in a match most people outside her own country never saw, Alex had already come back from a set down once before. Nobody was talking about it anymore, not after the headline-stealing win, but it's exactly why her coaching box never once looked panicked, even as the scoreboard screamed they should. She walks out for the 3rd set like a different competitor entirely, not reckless, freer. Stepping inside the baseline on second serves, stealing time before it can be used against her. The crowd rebuilds itself carefully, excited but almost afraid to believe too soon, leaning forward anyway because they can't help it. Alex holds at love. The entire rhythm resets in a single game. Deep into the next return game, 3 returns land deeper than anything she'd attempted all match, the 3rd one flat and blistering, right down the middle before her opponent's split step even finishes. Deuce. Deuce again. A let cord bounces her way. Pure luck. The kind that either breaks a match wide open or gets wasted completely, depending on the next 3 seconds. No hesitation. She steps in, rips it cross court. Break. This time the noise isn't celebration, it's relief. A completely different sound. The sound of a building exhaling all at once. That should have settled things. It doesn't, not immediately. Serving to consolidate, Alex drops to 15-30. Exactly the moment a comeback quietly slips through your fingers if you're not careful. It doesn't slip. 2 clean first serves. A forehand winner seals the hold. Somewhere in the stands, a small cluster of Filipino fans, who flew in on almost no notice, are filming with hands shaking too hard to hold steady. Her opponent digs in anyway, refuses to make any of it easy, trades holds right back. But something has shifted for good now. The momentum belongs to Alex. Lighter on her feet, quicker to the ball, absolutely certain this set isn't slipping away twice. Set point on her own serve. Wide serve, short reply, clean forehand rocketed into open court. 3rd set to Alex. Match completely level. Somewhere in the crowd, a flag gets raised so high the person holding it nearly loses balance. That should be the moment you exhale, right? The turning point where the underdog story finishes writing itself exactly how everyone in that stadium wanted. Except tennis doesn't care what you want. The deciding set felt like something else entirely. Heavier, tighter, every point carrying weight the first two sets simply hadn't. Here's the detail nobody mentions enough. Her opponent had already lived through a deciding set on this exact court, in her own run to a Wimbledon final 2 years earlier. Alex hadn't, not at this level, not with this much riding on every shot. She kept swinging with the same fearlessness that had toppled a Grand Slam champion days earlier, but her opponent started reading patterns half a step earlier now, anticipating the cross-court forehand before it even left the strings. A small adjustment that changed absolutely everything. Midway through the set, in a service game that felt like its own separate hour, her opponent finally gets the break she'd been hunting since point 1. 2 impossible retrievals keep the game alive against all odds. Then one backhand clips the tape and falls the wrong side. Break. And here's the part that should surprise you. Center court doesn't turn against her. It goes quiet instead. The specific quiet of thousands of people silently willing one player to find something extra from somewhere. For a few games, it looks like she might. She saves break points with fearless first serves that shouldn't have landed but did, chases down balls that should have been clean winners, and somehow drags them back into play, still smiling between points, still not done, at least not yet. That should have carried her all the way to the final games. It almost does. Serving at 3-4, she faces the hardest stretch of the entire 2.5 hours. Deuce. Deuce again. A rally stretches past 15 shots, both refusing to blink. Then finally, a backhand sails just long on breakpoint. The break arrives, and with it, the unmistakable sense that this has reached its final stretch. Her opponent serves for the match at 5-3. Alex attacks every return, refuses to give away a single free point, fights for every inch like the scoreboard hasn't already decided. But her opponent has done exactly this before, on courts exactly like this one, and she closes it out the way only someone who's actually reached a Wimbledon final knows how. One clean serve, one final forehand. 6-4, 4-6, 6-3. 2.5 hours of the most gripping tennis this tournament produced, and it's over. Here's what you need to understand about what happens next, because it's the part almost nobody expects. She doesn't collapse, doesn't cry, walks straight to the net, shakes hands, shares a warm, genuine embrace with the woman who just ended her run. Then the entire stadium rises. Not for a champion lifting a trophy, for a 21-year-old who spent 2 weeks completely rewriting what people believed was even possible for her. She leaves London as the first player from her country to ever reach the 4th round of Wimbledon, a record that didn't exist 2 weeks earlier, and now carries her name permanently. Clips of the win were racking up millions of views before she'd even left the grounds that evening, and footage of her fighting back to level the match spread just as fast. Proof that somewhere in that second week, this had stopped being just a sports story. Here's the twist that matters more than the scoreline. The record says she lost. Watch those 2.5 hours again, though, and you'll see something completely different. A player who refused to be intimidated by a legendary name across the net, who clawed back from a set down against an opponent with real personal motivation for revenge, who pushed a deciding set all the way to the final game while an entire country stayed up past midnight just to watch her do it. Her opponent walked off, finally having answered the one result that had bothered her all season, and she'd need every bit of that composure again within days, because a place in the quarterfinals meant another dangerous opponent, another full house, another chance for someone else's story to try ending hers the exact same way she'd just ended this one. One door closes, another opens immediately, no time to enjoy a win, no time to mourn a loss. Her coach didn't say much afterward, just stood near the tunnel, arms crossed, watching her walk off court. She picked up her bag, took one last look around center court. The applause still hadn't stopped. It still hasn't, really, if you ask anyone who was in that building. 2 weeks earlier, nobody across the net from her would have thought twice about her name. That's no longer true, and it changed in front of the entire sport, not on some forgotten outer court, but on center court itself, twice, against a defending champion, and then against a former finalist, in front of cameras that had barely learned to pronounce her name before that first return sailed long into the London sky. Results fade fast in professional tennis. That's the brutal truth of this sport. Next month brings new tournaments, new headlines, and most players who have one incredible week get forgotten within a season if they don't back it up immediately. But some results carry weight regardless of what comes next. Because this one never measured a ranking or a bracket position. It measured belief, hers, and an entire nation's, built match by match over 2 weeks that nobody saw coming, and that nobody who actually watched will forget anytime soon. She walked down that tunnel, out of the light, out of the noise, and somewhere behind her, center court was already resetting itself for whatever came next. The way tournaments always move on without looking back. Except this time, it won't be forgotten quite so easily. Because everyone in that building now has a name they didn't know 2 weeks earlier. And if you were paying attention to any of this, you already know. They're not going to stop watching for it.